Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Mónica Meléndez. Yo soy la directora del Centro de Idiomas de la Universidad Ricardo Palma, Idiomas Ricardo Palma, y hoy día, viernes 3 de febrero, les damos la bienvenida a una noche que se ha venido celebrando durante varios años ya, exactamente 8 años, gracias a una iniciativa en el Reino Unido que celebra, que le rinde homenaje, que nos invita a hacer una pausa en torno a una saga de libros que se ha vuelto inolvidable. Se dice de Harry Potter que ha sido para muchos la iniciación hacia el hábito de la lectura. Se ha abierto la posibilidad de soñar a través de esas historias, de este grupo de amigos que nos han mostrado no solamente magia, sino muchas otras cosas. Que la amistad con los años se puede hacer más fuerte, que nosotros podemos superar obstáculos en compañía de nuestros amigos, de nuestra familia, que el bien vence al mal y podemos hacer miles de interpretaciones. Mientras vamos viendo lo que les tenemos, además de la presentación del día de hoy de la conferencia, lo que Idiomas Ricardo Palma con mucho cariño se esmera en desarrollar y en presentar y ofrecer cada mes, como vamos a ver en este PPT. Nosotros tenemos nuestras clases de inglés, que desde el mes de abril van a ser también 100% presenciales, además de esta modalidad híbrida que tenemos actualmente. Luego tenemos las clases de portugués, de francés, las clases de quechua. En quechua hago un alto porque, como ustedes quizás ya saben, el curso de quechua está subvencionado económicamente por la universidad. ¿Qué es lo que quiere decir? Que es un precio, una inversión insuperable, es una inversión mínima, involucra también que ustedes van a recibir de forma gratuita, de momento, el material que es digital, y estamos intentando ofrecer la mayor cantidad de horarios posibles en Quechua 1 para que iniciemos un poco más a conocer nuestro país a través del aprendizaje del quechua. Es una misión de la Universidad Ricardo Palma llevar quechua o el aprendizaje de quechua a la mayor cantidad de espacios posibles. Luego tenemos, como vamos a ver acá, nuestro club de lectura en su segunda temporada. Abordaremos Rosa Cuchillo, una obra que se encuentra en este momento nominada a los premios Luces, Madame Gauguin, y finalizaremos con Trilce, una versión español quechua del Fondo Editorial de la Universidad Ricardo Palma. Algo que no hemos mencionado aún es que vamos a sortear los libros entre quienes se inscriban para que no solamente puedan participar de las sesiones que ya de por sí son muy valiosas, sino que además se pueden llevar el libro a casa. Seguimos con nuestras conferencias para inglés y acá vamos a hacer el cambio de español a inglés. As you guys know, today's presentation is addressed to people that speak English at an intermediate or at an advanced level. And I thought it was important also to introduce you to the activities that we have for people that speak English. First, we have our conversation course. You can join the course every month. It's going to last 6 months. We are starting our second month in the middle of February. I think I lost the connection for a minute. And we also have a workshop where we are analyzing literature addressed to people that are young, but not only young people can enjoy. And we are going to close registration for this workshop next Tuesday, February 7th. What else does Idiomas Ricardo Palma have? Well, today's conference. On the 16th, we also have a conference for teachers of English where we are going to introduce you to our specialization program for teachers of English. And the talk of that day, February 16th, is gamification. So here I have some of the books that have accompanied us, and I'm sure Mr. Castro, whose biodata you can see here, has already enjoyed. This is one of the editions. I have in my hand a Spanish edition. This is one. Then we have another one, which is very well known because of its illustrations. Maybe this is the one that you have at home or the one that you have read. It's in an A4 format. It also has very beautiful illustrations. And then we also have one that is interactive. Why am I showing this? Because some of these might be the ones that you have read at home. And in case you haven't, I'm going to show you before we take a look at the abstract of today's conference, our prizes, what you're going to win if you register. So right now, through Facebook and through our YouTube channel, we are going to copy the link to the registration form. What are you going to do if you want to participate in the raffle of these two books, plus the tote bags that everybody likes so much? Of course, you like them because they are very pretty. We have our new tote bags, as you can see, maybe here. I don't know how to place it so you can see it completely. Can we go back to the abstract of today's session and then show, to finish up my introduction with the two books? So today, as I said, we are going to celebrate an important moment for Harry Potter's fans and all these characters and these wonderful worlds of imagination and wizarding. Are you there, Mr. Castro? Ready to start? Let's see if Mr. Castro is already here with us. I think he is. Thank you so much. Mr. Castro is currently teaching English 5 in the evening at Idiomas Ricardo Palma, and this is the third year in which he accompanies us to go over this topic. I think he's also a fan of Harry Potter in addition to being an English teacher. Mr. Castro, these are the two books that we are going to raffle at the end of today's session, together with, I'm going to show you again, together with the bag. Yes. How are you this evening?
It's a pleasure for me to be sharing my love for Harry Potter for the third year in a row. And I'm very pleased that there are such great gifts or giveaways for the audience.
So people can participate in the raffle if they register on the link that is already pasted through Facebook, on the Facebook comments, and in our YouTube channel. Maybe during the session you can remind them, as we are going to do also in the comments, to register, because that's the only way in which we can know who attended today's session and who can take home these wonderful books. This talk, today's session, is being sponsored by SBS Librería. I invite you to visit SBS because SBS has all these books and many more. Welcome to today's session. Thank you, Mr. Castro.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Like I said, it's really a pleasure to be able to spend time with others, even though we're spending time, in this case, virtually. I am glad that we are spending time together, in this case, talking about something that I enjoy. And I want to start, in this case, by talking a little bit about the background before the first release of the Harry Potter book series. And this is because there have been many stories, books, even movies, films uh, regarding wizards and sorcerers and witches. But I here sort of picked like the most memorable ones, the ones that have had the most impact uh, throughout history, and that somehow um, makes magic or witchcraft, let's say, a part of pop culture nowadays. So I'm going to start here, for example, with this first illustration of the evil witch of the West, if I'm not mistaken, in the Wonderful Wizard of Oz book. This is an original illustration, and as you can see, first of all, there is no wand. And in case you're wondering what a wand is, this is a wand, right? This is the wand owned by my daughter, right? She was kind enough to lend it to me for this presentation. Look at this witch with no wand. And you can see this witch now also. This is in the Snow White animated movie from 1937. Again, black cloak, no wand, and we start to get this connection between black as the cloak for witches and dark magic. Now, when the first movie, in this case, and the only one actually, The Wizard of Oz, came to the screen, we also have the Wicked Witch of the West, this time with a green face, green skin, and also the black cloak, and even the black pointy hat. If you've read the books, the Harry Potter books, you may have noticed that they wear the pointy hats throughout the year, throughout the years actually, but in the movies they don't wear them that much. But also in this movie, The Wizard of Oz by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, we have Glinda, right? The Good Witch. And she is the first one to carry a wand. And she performs good magic with that wand. I think these elements are starting to build up, right? Here we have, for example, the Blue Fairy in Pinocchio also carrying a wand, also using the wand for her enchantments and spells. And here we go back to the no wand magic in this very fascinating clip, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, a very famous short story that, by the way, is part of this very famous animated movie, Fantasia, by Walt Disney. You may have noticed also, this is our third mention of a Disney character. And as I was saying, we have again the pointy hat and the use of magic without wand, the wandless use of magic. Now again, we have the fairy godmother, a magical creature. And in this case, she's also using a wand to do magic. And we move on. 1959, we have now 3 fairy godmothers, all of them equipped with wands. We have Flora, we have Fauna, we have Merryweather, all of them. If I'm not mistaken, this is from Sleeping Beauty. But now we have one of the most powerful and feared characters in pop culture, Darth Vader. You might say, what does a Darth Vader have to do with magic? But all of these, let's say, mentions of the dark side of the Force, the dark attire, even this like very technological cloak or a hood covering not only his head but his face as well. And again, this kind of wandless magic, dark magic, might be considered by some. And this is 1977, the saga of Star Wars, in this case, Episode 4. And then just 6 years later, we have, again, another Star Wars movie. This is Episode 6. And we have the Emperor. Again, using this sort of dark magic known as the Force in the Star Wars movies. You might say there's good use of magic, let's say the Force by the Jedi, but there's also the dark use of magic, in this case, the dark side of the Force. So we are starting to know that magic can have different sides. The good side, the evil side. And you can see also that magic is something that depends on who wields it and who uses it. And it was 1983. It had to be 1983, right? We have to be 18 years later, right? 18 years later for us to meet Harry Potter and for us to see for the first time Harry Potter holding a wand. And this is something that really catches my attention, how all this school system, right, in this case, namely Hogwarts, right, has even the school supplies list, the recommended places to shop for the supplies, and this is something remarkable, because we have to understand that the majority of books, if I'm not mistaken, 6 out of the 7 Harry Potter books were published in July while students were on vacation, right? Basically different days in July, but most of the books, again, if I'm not mistaken, 6 of the 7 books were published in July. So imagine children reading about school preparations in July when they especially return to school in September, just like Harry Potter. Harry Potter starts school every year in September. 4 years later, we see, I believe for the first time in pop culture, a dark wizard holding a wand. And look again, and this is the background I was trying to provide you with, how he is dressed, again, like a dark wizard. We have these sort of allegories coming to our head. The evil witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. The witch, the bad witch in Snow White, Darth Vader, the Emperor, all dressed in black. all dressed from shoulder to toe, or sometimes even with hoods in black. And the thing about the wand, though, is something that creates some sort of mystery, because this is one place where J.K. Rowling distinguishes herself from the others, where she makes some sort of difference in the magic world. We see for the first time a dark wizard, an evil wizard, trying to do magic with a wand. And if we if we remember the last book in the series, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, we not only see Voldemort using a wand, but also looking for the one wand, for that most powerful wand. And in my opinion, I think this is just a way of making Voldemort also not as strong as one other character in the book series. I guess we can all agree that is Dumbledore, the most powerful wizard of all. Also with the ability of using wandless magic, the ability to not use a wand, to not need a wand to perform magic, something that Dumbledore was capable to do. And now that we finally mentioned the books, I want to tell you a little bit of how I became a fan of the Harry Potter books and also movies. I remember it was 1999 when I saw an ad outside this department store called Saga at that time, now called Falabella or Saga Falabella. I'm really not sure about the name right now. And I remember that the ad said that this book, of course, released in Peru in Spanish, released in Chile first in Spanish, was like the new phenomenon in children's literature around the world. And this was published in Peru, available for sale in Peru in 1999. This is the book printed by MSA, which later would become Salamandra. At that time, MSA was not part of Salamandra, or I think they changed the name into Salamandra. I have to say my details about publishing houses are not that accurate. But we can see on the cover is MSA. Now it is Salamandra. And the illustrations were made by Dolores Avendaño. Again, you have that the book, that edition. When I saw that for the first time, of course, it didn't catch my eye. I mean, I was an adult already and didn't have children, wasn't really interested in something advertised for children. The publishing company is Bloomsbury, and the illustrations were done by Thomas Taylor. Thomas Taylor, who later in an interview said that they specifically told him to draw a child wearing glasses with a lightning scar on his forehead in front of a red locomotive. And now I'm going to introduce to you the first Harry Potter book I read. This is the American version, and the American version came out 1 year later than the British original. Here we have Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, which in British English culture is the name of this stone that can make the bearer immortal. That's the name in British English culture, pop culture, the Philosopher's Stone. However, in the United States, that is known as the Sorcerer's Stone. And so they had to change the name of the book. Of course, they also changed the spelling, you know, there are differences. They didn't change the vocabulary though, right? But they did change the spelling. And in my opinion, this is a very good edition. I would say way better than the British edition, and I'll tell you why. This is because the fonts, the print was large enough for children. Also, the illustrations, in this case by 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗥𝗬𝗓, a Canadian artist, were also, to my taste, better than the art by Mr. Taylor. Yes, I got the name right, Thomas Taylor. Also, at the beginning of each chapter in this American edition, there was one black and white illustration also by 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗥𝗬𝗓, something that the original edition with only the cover, right, by Thomas Taylor didn't have. And this was interesting, at the same time catchy, because you had a picture at the beginning, a small picture, sort of giving you a clue, sometimes distracting you probably about what is going to come in the chapter. And I gotta tell you, I started reading this book, I would say 2005 or 2006. This book, this Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. And that's when I started reading all the books. I'm going to tell you about that a little bit later. But now it's time to talk about why we love Harry Potter. In my case, the book series, I love than the movie series. Even though we have 7 books, but we have 8 movies. Some people might say there's more fun in watching 8 movies than in reading 7 books. But I gotta tell you, there's so much detail. There's so much going on in your head as you're reading the books that you really, if you haven't yet, give it a try. Read the books. If you could, and I'm pretty sure you can because you are listening to this talk, attending this virtual talk in English, and you can read the books in English. So here we have, one more time, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, published in 1997. What happens here? Why do we love this book? Why did this book took the world by storm? Here again, this is one illustration by 𝗕𝗢𝗢𝗥𝗬𝗓, great illustrator in my opinion. And I think one more time, if you were a child back in 1997, or if you are a child, you have a child at home, and you start reading about this kid who finds out he is much more than he thought he is. And then he starts attending a very special school. And there's some sort of something people might relate to, especially, for example, a kid moving from one city to another, a kid that is going to be transferred to another school. This is not the first year Harry goes to school at all, right? This would be like going to secondary school in the UK or high school in the United States. But it's a new school. And there's this mystery of going to a new school, of wondering what kind of people you're going to meet there. And as I said before, also this thrill, right, of the new school and a completely new school supply list. I remember when I was a kid, and I can tell you, I was very, very happy when I got to lay my hands on the school supply list, right? And I was wondering where we're going to go get the books. In this book, for example, we learned about diagonally. We learned about the bookstore, right? And I think this is the most important thing. Right from the very first day, on the way to Hogwarts, Harry makes his very first new friend, Ron Weasley. And I think that sort of makes the reader, if the reader is a child, if the reader is really relating to the future experience of a new school, it suits the reader to have, from day one, a new friend. And then, of course, there's the girl. A girl to whom, by the way, these characters are not attracted. I mean, after all, they're only 11 years old, right? According to the book, Harry, Ron Weasley, and Hermione are just 11 years old, an age where most boys just hate girls. You want to be boys over here, girls over there. If you are a teacher like me and you've taught kids, you know kids don't like to sit near girls and girls don't like to sit near boys. And so there's this first adventure with the troll, for example, that creates the bond in this perfect triangle of characters: Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And I think that's the essence of that first book. Leave the adventure aside, leave the magic aside, which is probably impossible, but you have this story about a group of friends, 2 boys and 1 girl. I would say that's the most important thing. That's the key to conquering the world if you are a book writer. And of course, I'm not going to ignore what I have right in front of me on the screen. We get to know what Quidditch is, right? And I like this, again, this parallelism between the magic world and the real world, the Muggle world, right? In the Muggle world, we have soccer, or as the British say, football, but they have their most popular sport, Quidditch, which, by the way, also involves not only 1 ball, but if I'm not mistaken, we're talking about three balls and 1 snitch. Again, we meet the Forbidden Forest. We meet mythological creatures. We find mythological creatures in the Forbidden Forest, like the unicorn, like these people, half man, half horse, the centaurs. I almost forget that name. But that was 1997. Just 1 year later, after this perhaps unexpected success, J.K. Rowling publishes, also in July, this time 1998, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Now, this is probably something you haven't realized if you haven't read the book. There's no mention of a Ford Anglia in the book. When you see the movie, there's a Ford Anglia. Blue, sky blue. But again, you can grab the Chamber of Secrets and you're not going to find the make of the car, of the flying car. The make of the flying car is a consequence, again, of an illustration by Thomas Taylor. So Thomas Taylor decides to draw a flying Ford Anglia in blue, and of course, it becomes iconic, and it has to go in the movie. It has to be a Ford Anglia in the movie. Now, but what about the Chamber of Secrets? More than the mystery of the Philosopher's Stone, I would say there's a little more thrill, there's a little more suspense, and also fun, especially in the character of Gilderoy Lockhart, the useless Gilderoy Lockhart, right? The phony Gilderoy Lockhart. But it's also our first time, right, witnessing the appearance of a house elf, which, by the way, becomes one of the most beloved non-human characters in the Harry Potter book series. Of course, we know, and I don't want to spoil anything, right? Spoiler alert, just in case if you haven't read the books, you haven't watched any of the movies, finds a very tragic end lots of years later. Also, we start to become intrigued by certain abilities Harry Potter has, like speaking parcel tongue. This adds a little dark magic, more dark magic to the Harry Potter book series, and also Tom Riddle's diary. We also meet Tom Riddle for the first time, and we learn that Tom Riddle is the real name of Lord Voldemort, who, by the way, appeared in the first book also. It's the first time that we have to acknowledge how good Hermione is at school when she concocts by herself, almost by herself, the polyjuice potion. This potion capable of transforming the drinker into another person. A potion that, by the way, is going to reappear and is going to be essential for one of the most important characters in the Goblet of Fire. It's also fun in this book, as we visited Diagon Alley in the first book, we visit Nocturne Alley in this second book. So now we know, for example, where the dark wizards and witches go shopping, and I think that's the fun part of the books. There's always fun in the books. There's mystery, there's adventure, but there's always fun in the book. Here we have, for example, again, Mary Grandpré, great illustrations. We have the Hogwarts Express In the background, we have the four Anglia flying, and we have the whooping willow right there. This famous tree that comes alive. One year later, again in July in 1999, the prisoner of Azkaban is released. And here, again, we are introduced to new characters. Not only, in this case, do we have Professor Lupin, but we also have Harry Potter's godfather, Sirius Black. And we have this fantastic creature as is this hippogriff. And we also, for the first time, and we have to remember that now Harry Potter is 13 years old. I'm pretty sure Ron Weasley is about 6 months older than Harry. But when they start school, every time they start school, they are the same age. I'm talking about, of course, Harry, Hermione, and Ron. They are 13 years old. And it's the first time in this case, because you have to understand that the characters in the book are growing, but the readers are also growing. That's, again, part of the enchantment and the magic of J.K. Rowling's creativity. Because we read, and this is again why I recommend reading the books. Read for the first time this little crush that Harry starts developing for Cho Chang. A little crush that is going to become stronger in the next book because, again, our characters are growing. They are not children anymore. They start to become teenagers. They're not pubers anymore. They're becoming teenagers now. We also have, for example, the Morales map. These fantastic contrivance devised by Harry Potter's father, Harry Potter's godfather, also Lupin and Wormtail. We're talking about Prongs, Padfoot, Moony, and Wormtail. Right? And this is interesting because with this appearance in this story, we learn a little bit about Harry Potter's teenage years, right? We know that Harry Potter's father, as a teenager, was a sort of a rascal, a rebel, together, of course, with his good friend Sirius. But Harry Potter was already a world phenomenon. And I don't know how, but J.K. Rowling manages to publish a fourth book. This is a scene in The Three Broomsticks, again, by Mary Grant-Pray. J.K. Rowling manages to publish another book, a fourth book in 4 years. One book every July for the fourth consecutive year, fourth year in a row. In this case, we're talking about The Goblet of Fire. A book, for example, that takes away Quidditch from us, but gives us, first of all, the British World Cup, and also gives us the Tri-Wizard Tournament, like the most spectacular, the grandest sports events, the grandest adventures. We have in this case, the opportunity to learn for the first time about the Death Eaters. In the Goblet of Fire, we have a very intense finale with the death of Cedric Diggory. We have the sort of resurrection of Lord Voldemort. And once again, in this case, our characters, our beloved 3 people, are 14 years old already. Like I said, they're teenagers. They go through this weird stage of being attracted to the opposite sex. They go through this stage of looking for a date for the Yule Ball. And we see how Harry Potter, for example, is so attracted to Cho Chang by now that he finds it difficult to ask her on a date. He finds it really difficult, almost impossible, to ask Cho Chang to go with him to the Yule Ball. Like I said, it's not only the characters that are growing, but also the readers, the audience. And again, it's also the first time that we see Hagrid, another beloved character in the books and the movies, trying to teach for the first time. Not very successfully. Hermione, Harry, and Ron have to help him out a lot, but it's something important here because J.K. Rowling starts giving Hagrid a bigger relevance, in this case, in this book. We even learn, how do we know that J.K. Rowling starts giving Hagrid more relevance? Because we learn a little bit about Hagrid's childhood. It's the 4th book, it's the 4th year in school, and Harry, Hermione, Ron, and the readers learn for the first time about Hagrid's father, about Hagrid's childhood, about Hagrid's mother. And it's funny because when I read this book for the first time, I remember there's this journalist character, Rita Skeeter. I mean, this is Peru. It made me so much relate to Melly Medina, right? It's all about gossip. It's all about exaggerating. It's all about creating rumors. And again, the readers can relate a lot with characters like these. And by the way, this reminds me of the hilarious end, of course, not the end of her life, but the hilarious end of the Rita Skeeter character in this story, in this book. And one thing that is not in the movies, and for me, it was, like I said, I mean, I couldn't stop laughing about how Rita Skeeter ended up in the last chapter of Goblet of Fire. How are we doing with the time? Oh. So, hello? Can you hear me? Yes. All right. So, if you like dragons, you're in for a ride if you read The Goblet of Fire. Now, after publishing 4 years in a row, 4 books, sorry, in 4 years, J.K. Rowling had to take a break. But she didn't have to take a break to stop writing. No, she had to take a break to sort of look over the production, the screenwriting of the first Harry Potter movie, which was released in November 2001. Here we are going to talk about the books. Of course, we cannot forget we have the movies available. November 2002, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets movie was released. And then again, in July 2003, the 5th Harry Potter book was published. And in this case, we are talking about adolescence. Adolescence at its peak. Our characters are 15-year-olds now. Again, the readers have already grown. Now, you can imagine, for example, if a child started reading the Harry Potter book, let's say at 11, just like Harry, by 2003, the reader would be 17, right? 11 years old, 1997, 17 years old, 2003. But remember that this book was also very appealing for younger children, like the 8-year-olds, for example. And if you are an 8-year-old, if you were an 8-year-old in 1997, right, then in 2003, you are 14. Now you're only 1 year younger than Harry Potter. And again, you can relate to the teenage interests, the teenage puppy loves, the romance, the weird stages, the hormones. And on top of that, the mystery, the war, the dark magic, Death Eaters, Voldemort, the prophecy. And the first kiss that involved Harry Potter ever. Harry Potter kisses for the first time Cho Chang in this book, and the experience was not all that great, right? Cho Chang was still trying to get over the death of Cedric Diggory. Harry was sort of uncomfortable with that. And on top of that, Harry starts feeling weird because the girl that had a crush on him, and about Ginny Weasley, Ron's sister, starts dating. We see in this book Ginny Weasley dating Michael Corner. And in the same year, remember that Ginny is 1 year younger than Harry Potter. So if Harry is 15 years old in the Order of the Phoenix, Ginny is 14. And in the same year, she dumps Michael Corner, starts dating Dean Thomas. And here is a theory of mine. Even though it's not really difficult to find continuance in the Harry Potter book series, start with the Order of the Phoenix. We can see that J.K. Rowling starts leaving breadcrumbs. Now, what do I mean by that? In the Order of the Phoenix, we read, and probably we don't pay much attention to it, that there is such a piece of furniture called the Vanishing Cabinet. George and Fred, the Weasley brothers, right, have some sort of fight with Montag from the Slytherin house, and they push him, stuff him, and lock him inside a vanishing cabinet. Now, in the book, you read that it's just like an anecdote, like a prank by a couple of teenagers. But it so happens that in the following book, in The Half-Blood Prince, we learn that Draco Malfoy talks to Montag after he escapes from the Vanishing Cabinet, and that's when he gets the idea of using the Vanishing Cabinets to get the Death Eaters inside Hogwarts. So it's not like the Vanishing Cabinet appears, just pops up, right, out of nowhere in the 6th book. No, the Vanishing Cabinet is already mentioned in the 5th book, and is also mentioned in the 2nd book, even though we don't know it's called a Vanishing Cabinet. In fact, there is the other Vanishing Cabinet mentioned in the 2nd book when Harry by accident visits Nocturnally. Oh, I forgot to mention that we also get to visit the Ministry of Magic in the Order of the Phoenix book. The 3rd Harry Potter movie comes out. This is released, if I'm not mistaken, in July for the first time. And it, in fact, is released on Independence Day in the United States, 4th of July. Talking about, of course, The Prisoner of Azkaban. And now, of course, I cannot ignore how popular the movies are. I know a lot of people that love Harry Potter just because of the movies and they've never read the books. We have to understand that. And something I should have mentioned about the movies is that the first 2 movies, they were directed, in this case, by the same director for Home Alone. If you're not familiar with the name, I gotta tell you, Home Alone is that movie we call Mi Pobre Angelito. Columbus is his name, right? So Columbus directed the first 2 movies. In fact, it is said that Columbus himself wanted Daniel Radcliffe to be Harry Potter. He didn't want anybody else for the character. Now, then later, 2002, again, as I said, Chamber of Secrets. Again, Columbus is the director. And we can see that both movies have the same style. And of course, it's just one director for those first 2 movies. But in the third movie, we have a Mexican director. If I'm not mistaken, that's Mr. Cuarón, right? And it's interesting because if you look at the actors, if you look at the posters, even though the size on the screen is not that big, or the posters on the screen are not big enough, we can see that the actors now are not children anymore, right? 3 years have passed since they filmed or they shot the first movie. So assuming that Daniel Radcliffe and the other actors were also 11 when they shot Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, when they shot The Prisoner of Azkaban, they were 14. They were, in reality, 1 year older than the characters they were playing. And the choice of Cuarón is interesting for me because Cuarón had some success, I would say big success, directing Y Tu Mamá También. In fact, that movie had a Spanish name when it was released for the English-speaking market. And in this movie, Y Tu Mamá También, there's also, of course, the characters are a lot older, but they have the essence of teenagers becoming adults or young adults. And I think that is very important in the concept that Cuarón gives to The Prisoner of Azkaban. And I'm talking about the movie. Of course, the style is also different. Our characters are not wearing Hogwarts uniforms anymore most of the time. And I think it's probably one of my favorite movies among the series. 2005. Now we have the 6th book, the second to last book, The Half-Blood Prince. And I have to tell you, when I read The Half-Blood Prince, I think it was the first time I was really looking forward to watching the movie. Right? I mean, I started reading the books around 2005, right? And I remember I was going over the books very quickly because I have to commute a long distance, to and from work. I was riding on public transportation, and I was always reading. Every time I was on the bus, I was reading. And I also read The Order of the Phoenix, and that's also something important. I also read The Order of the Phoenix in 2005, 2006, but it's the first book that I read without watching the movie. But again, when I read The Half-Blood Prince for the first time, I really looked forward to see how the directors and the screenwriter would manage to tell the story on the screen. Because it's a very, very complex story, and it's also dark because we learn about Tom Riddle's childhood. We sort of start to understand how Tom Riddle becomes Lord Voldemort, and almost why he becomes Lord Voldemort. And I didn't mention this before, but there's a lot of social issues also in the Harry Potter book series. From the first book, for example, allow me to go back to the first book when Draco meets Harry and he says that Harry is going to be better off hanging out with him, right? Draco sees also Ron Weasley despectively, right? And sort of makes fun of him and tells Harry that he shouldn't make friends with Ron Weasley, that he should make friends with him because he knows the right people, because he has the contacts. And in the second book, in the Chamber of Secrets, we learn about this outrageous insult that purebloods use. I'm talking about, of course, the word mudblood. And again, there's a heavy social reference in that character, right? Draco and the Malfoys in general are racists, supremacists. They abuse their house elf. And in the Half-Blood Prince, we learn that Tom Riddle was abused, ignored, was abandoned by his father. And it's some sort of way of explaining how, for example, children that do not have the privilege of being part of a family somehow end up being a burden to society. I'm not trying to rationalize or justify crime or anything, but we know there are sociologists that have done research to demonstrate that some part of the criminal population become what they are because they didn't have a family growing up. So again, we sort of understand how and why Voldemort or Tom Riddle becomes Voldemort. I think we're running a little bit out of time. Here's a scene when Dumbledore and Harry Potter through the pensieve visit the house of Gaunt, right? One of Tom Riddle's ancestors. Then we have the Goblet of Fire movie, right? I gotta tell you also, that's the first movie I ever saw, right? And I saw the movie before I started reading the books. Then we have the Order of the Phoenix movie, 2007. And just 1 week later, the final book is released, The Deathly Hallows. And I remember this episode when I was reading the book, and I have this friend who is a father. He has like 2 children, and he knows I'm reading the books. He's 5 years older than me, but I am a grown-up, an adult reading the Harry Potter books, and he asks me, "Hey, so how's the reading coming?" And I said, "Hey, Dumbledore dies." And that's when I was reading the Half-Blood Prince. He said, "What?" I can still remember his face because I totally spoiled the movies for him. Of course, he never read the books, but he went to the movies with his children, and of course he was familiar with all the Harry Potter movies, right? So when I read the Half-Blood Prince, and he asked me, "Hey, how's the reading going?" I said, "Hey, Dumbledore dies." He was like completely and totally astonished, as the readers were, right? And I think that's something important, again, because readers, in this case children or teenagers, they learn to deal with the death, in this case, of a beloved character. First, it was Sirius Black, in my opinion. You could talk about Cedric Diggory, of course, right? But I think the first tragic death, right, or the first most unexpected death, was that of Sirius Black, and then we have Dumbledore's death, and kind of right in the first chapters of the Deathly Hallows, Hagrid dies, and I think again that's not something you see in the movies, right? And also Mad-Eye Moody dies again, from the first chapter of the book. And of course, right, we have dragons, we have the Battle of Hogwarts, we have a grand finale for the story, and then we have to wait 2 years for the Half-Blood Prince movie, 1 year for the Deathly Hallows Part 1, and another year for the Deathly Hallows Part 2. I just want you to understand how much you can learn by reading the books in English, how much you can relate not only to the characters. The characters are probably a lot younger than you. They're definitely a lot younger than I am. But even in reading, as I was reading these books, I remember my school years, but I found a lot of social criticism in these books. And I don't want to forget to mention, for example, the House Elf Liberation Front led by Hermione, right? So social issues like slavery, like racism, supremacism, right? And these sort of similarities between the Death Eaters and the Nazis, for example, are what make Harry Potter, the book series, a book that I would recommend not only for children, but also for teenagers and even young adults. They're fun to read. And I think we are right on time, because they're going to be
I wanted to mention that we have 5 questions. I hope you have the time to address them. And one of them is related to learning English and reading the book. Would you recommend reading Harry Potter to learn English? Is there any other thing you would recommend so that people learn or better their command of the language?
That's a good question, and I have to thank for the opportunity to address that. I would say definitely, if you're going to read these books in English, you should at least have an intermediate level. Definitely. I must admit, I don't know if there's a reader's version, a graded reader's version of the Harry Potter book series. If there isn't, I pray there will soon be one. Okay, and I have to say, all the books I read in English I borrowed from the library, right, on my workplace. But one book was loaned to me by one of my students. She knew that I read the books in English, right? And by the way, she had also bought the book in English because she wanted, like me, to read the books ahead of the movies. So I think one intermediate level is necessary to read these books in English, and definitely you're going to learn a lot.
Um, I could add, maybe we can read them in Spanish and talk about it in class. Maybe not only this book, but any book you like, or you could watch the movie with captions or maybe with subtitles.
Yeah, I would recommend, for example, uh, using subtitles in English if your level is not that high. I'm talking about the movies, of course, but leaving the audio in English. That way we can become familiar with the accent, with the words. I mean, I forgot to say that I read the books many times, all of them, and I watched the movies also many times. So I really love the book series more than the movie series. But I think it's a great opportunity for learning, definitely. It's always better to learn doing something that you love, like watching the movies. Uh, can I read the questions too?
Yes, and that's precisely one of them. Which ones do you like better, the movies or the books? And in addition to that question, can I ask you to choose maybe or sum up maybe two or three so that you can address them before the raffle?
Sure. I have this one that says, ¿qué le motivó a seguir aprendiendo este idioma y cómo podría recomendarnos a nosotros para tener una mejor técnica en este idioma? The little things matter, right? Like setting your smartphone language to English, whatever device, electronic device that is yours, like your laptop, like your smartphone. If you have a TV in your room and you set it up in English, then you are forced to using English the whole day, right? Even if it makes you feel uncomfortable. I started studying French last year, and my devices are set in French. Sometimes I don't understand what they say, but I remember, hey, wait, this is the first option, second option, and I'm learning that way what that French word means, right? ¿Cuál cree que sería el significado e importancia de la obra de Harry Potter para la juventud actual? Uh, I think it's that message, in addition to the social criticism, by the way, which is why I recommend reading the books, is that importance of friendship during school years, whether it is high school or college, university. Uh, Going through that with a friend next to you is going to make everything better, and the memories you're going to have. I mean, that's, I think, the greatest contribution to appreciate your school friends or your college friends. Do you think Harry Potter saga had an impact on how people learn English? That I would definitely not dare answer. We would need some research there, of course, in other countries, in countries where English is taught as a second language or as a foreign language. And I think there is no research yet on the topic. I'm no authority on that matter. Again, I apologize. I wouldn't dare answer that question.
Well, I would like to say that we are very pleased with the content, with all the details you made us remember for people my age or probably a little bit younger, of the times when the books were first released, when the movies hit the movie theaters, when we were a little bit younger and started watching them all, and we started collecting books like I did. I haven't read the complete saga, but I know that there are huge fans here, and they had a very important question: which is your favorite house, or which Hogwarts house do you belong to? That would be the most
Uh,
important. of the night, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah, I discovered like 2 years ago there's an option in the Wizarding World website for you to be sorted. And I am a Gryffindor. I gotta say, I'm happy to be a Gryffindor. I was sorted that way, and I'm very pleased.
Can I say that I am a Slytherin? Yes, thank you. Do you have the link to the page where we can find out what our house is? Can you share it in the comments, or maybe you can send it to us so we can share it with people before they leave the session? At this point, I'm going to switch to Spanish. Primero, para agradecerle a Mr. Castro el haber traído este contenido tan interesante que nos ha hecho recordar muchísimas cosas, muchísimos detalles sobre Harry Potter. Anunciar también que desde este año las instituciones a cargo de organizar la noche de Harry Potter han cambiado debido al éxito del evento a el día de Harry Potter, que en inglés sería Harry Potter Book Day, no Book Night. Y esta se va a celebrar en septiembre. Desde ya queremos extender la invitación a Mr. Castro para que haga la sesión en español en el mes de septiembre para poder llegar a una audiencia mayor. Hay una institución amiga, el británico, que está desarrollando durante el fin de semana actividades relacionadas con las casas de Hogwarts, con instituciones o empresas más que instituciones que también tienen que ver con este cariño que muchas personas le tenemos a la saga. OEC, Mrs. Ollivanders, que están organizando una serie de actividades y que yo estoy segura van a ser mucho más en el mes de septiembre. Entonces tenemos una segunda sesión en septiembre en español. Y con relación a las preguntas que no tienen que ver con la sesión del día de hoy, les queremos mencionar que sí, casi todos los meses tenemos conferencias. En febrero, en una semana exactamente, si me pueden ayudar con la imagen, tenemos una conferencia dirigida a profesores de inglés en las que veremos elementos digitales, aplicaciones, páginas que nos pueden ayudar a desarrollar nuestra clase. Esta es una sesión en inglés dirigida a personas que enseñan inglés, que están estudiando para ser profesores de inglés o que desean hacerlo y aún necesitan una motivación extra para animarse. Esto forma parte del programa de especialización en enseñanzas del inglés que también tenemos nosotros. Y tenemos por ahí un par de actividades por Saint Valentine's, que ya está muy, muy cerquita. Y también para el inicio del semestre, que es quizás el momento que más nos alegra en el año. La tercera semana de marzo están iniciando la mayoría de universidades sus clases. Y nosotros, hacer parte de la Universidad Ricardo Palma, para nosotros es un momento bastante importante en el año. Y queremos finalizar con lo más importante, con el sorteo, decirle a Mr. Castro que lamentablemente él no puede ser el ganador de ninguno de los libros porque él es el ponente, ni yo tampoco. Sin embargo, todas las personas, que les voy a decir en este momento exactamente cuántas son, las 85 personas que han logrado inscribirse en el enlace que acabamos de cerrar, están participando en este momento en el sorteo. Entonces, ¿qué tenemos? Los 2 libros y como tercer premio, la bolsa. Ustedes pueden elegir cuál y viene con varios elementos de idiomas Ricardo Palma y con un libro de inglés que mencionó Mr. Castro, un graded reader. Entonces, sin más preámbulo, queremos nuevamente agradecerle. Mr. Castro tiene clase en 5 minutos, se acaba de retirar. Muchísimas gracias por la presentación. Y aquí nuestros ganadores. Veamos quiénes son. Vamos a esperar, que está moviéndose la ruedita. Si me pueden ayudar con la imagen. Dentro del formulario de 85 personas tenemos 3 ganadores. Entonces voy a copiar en los comentarios de la sesión, tanto en la página de YouTube como en la página de Facebook, la página a la que Mr. Castro ha hecho referencia y que ya está pegada. Me acaban de ganar en este momento. Podemos ver, Erika, los nombres de los ganadores o ver el sorteo en vivo. Vamos a ver.
Sí, en un momento está cargando la página.
Perfecto. Esperemos entonces. Suerte a todas las personas que nos han dejado su nombre en el enlace. Veamos entonces quién es el ganador o ganadora. El primer libro es el que aparece en la imagen, es el libro azul. Me parece que es la versión de Jim Kay de The Philosopher's Stone, pero la versión en inglés. Entonces es este libro, pero en inglés. Ese es el primer ganador. Y nuestro primer ganador es... Veamos. Darcy Villafuerte Luna. Felicidades, Darcy. Tenemos el libro en la oficina del Centro de Idiomas, aula 219, del nuevo edificio de Humanidades y Lenguas Modernas en el campus universitario, Avenida Benavides 5440, Surco. Te puedes acercar previa coordinación durante el horario de oficina, donde te entregaremos el libro y te tomaremos una fotito. En segundo lugar, como nos has dejado tu número, nos vamos a poner en contacto contigo el día lunes, ya no el fin de semana, para coordinar la entrega. En segundo lugar, veamos, una señorita también, Dayana Andrea Piedrajayo, te felicito, gracias por conectarte y por estar con nosotros. Recuerden que tenemos las inscripciones abiertas para intermedio y avanzado y a partir de abril en ambas modalidades. En febrero tenemos todas las modalidades todavía híbridas. Y el ganador del tote bag con el merchandising del Centro de Idiomas y un graded reader. Me preguntan qué es un graded reader por acá. Ya les muestro. Un graded reader es un libro como este que viene según el nivel y puedes escoger Cherali Pastor, un nivel básico, intermedio o avanzado. Te felicito. Felicitaciones a las 3 ganadoras que coincidentemente son señoritas. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos y nuevamente las gracias a Mr. Castro. Nos vemos nuevamente con él en septiembre. Hasta luego.